This conference will now be recorded.
And
I apologize. Timing was bad. Go ahead, please.
we ran into Tony at ISC West and saw the product there. And well, I
That was actually, it was police chief's conference.
Chief's police deal. Okay, Chiefs of Police conference down in Durant, Oklahoma in June is where we were talking. We displayed there, and Tony was there displaying for Cambridge, and we started talking about the Surefire product because of us needing to connect to things over distances and some of the applications that we might have and some of the access control work for gates and stuff in the oil industry. So anyway, the conversation was struck up, and we had planned ahead to try to have a demo of it, and that's where we are today.
Excellent. Talk to me about some of your access in the oil industry and how that is structured.
I don't know that.
Well, most of it is it's off-site areas, and so we have a bunker where all the equipment's at, and we're trying to get to where we don't have to trench to every place for the gates. I would say 90% of what we would be controlling with your stuff would be gates.
And so you're saying there's some kind of a, whether it's concrete or in the ground or some kind of a bunker that's where all the control is, and you just need to get from there to the access gate that's on a perimeter, some type of scenario like that.
Yes, and it's getting bigger to where we're also controlling smaller buildings around that. We do a lot of state and government type work also, where they'll have, their headquarters, but they might have an impound yard. They might have a bunker, actual bunker for their ammunition, stuff like that. And instead of reaching over there to them or messing up what they've already got in place, we need to be able to just shoot something that's reliable that can't be hacked.
Excellent. Well, thank you first of all for that clarification, a little bit of what you're looking for. This sounds like a great fit for your scenario because of a couple things, and then we'll get into more details. But a couple things that come right off the top of my head is this is 128 AES encrypted, which is basically a military-grade encryption that people are really excited about when they find out that this has such high security. We have 72 channel hopping as well as over-the-air rekeying. So every time it's used, brand new key. So it's really very, very, very difficult to break. In fact, they say with the best computer, it would take something like 1 million years. So it's pretty tough to break this encryption. So on one side, military, government contracts, things like that, that has been an area that they have been pretty excited about. We have them in military installations, airports, things like that. The other side is coming out of a bunker to be able to control some things. This is something that we've done quite a bit. I have myself gone through 12 feet of concrete. We've been able to go through some really amazing things. And Tony will also show you, we have a testing kit that allows you to take it out there and prove it to yourself as well as your client. Hey, this is going to work for what we need to do. So we'll get started on that if that's all right. Gentlemen, please interrupt me if you have any questions. It's a little hard for me since I can't see you. You can't like, hey, John, whatever. But if you would please just chime right in. Don't feel bad about interrupting me. I'll just kind of keep going. We'll ask some questions as we go. We'll keep this kind of informal if that's all right.
Works for me.
So I don't know if Tony told you, but my name is John Caldwell. I'm the marketing director, and basically I have the opportunity to go out and meet with and attend installations with hundreds of people. I've been to over 1,000 installations this year, and so I have seen a lot, just a ton of different applications. And the one thing I love about that is I get to learn from the integrators. Those guys have some great, I say those guys, you guys have some great solutions and some great uses for Surefire, things that I would never come up with on my own. So I love being able to get out in the field and see what people are doing. Surefire, we'll talk today about what it does, what the value proposition is for you. Not only does it, you've got kind of a two-pronged approach here. You have what can it do to help get you out of this particular situation, with this bunker needing to not trench to the peripheral gate. There's also another side of Surefire that we'll talk about, and that is some of the value proposition of using it in other ways to just quickly get on to some other things. So we'll talk about that, talk about some of its unique applications and use cases. All right, so Surefire as a technology is a platform. It's a radio. We have 28 patents on this radio, and we have a lot of other things pending. Surefire is unlike everything else. You guys probably are used to people coming up and saying, okay, this wireless will do this, 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 and this, and then you find out it delivers about 1/10 of what is promised. Am I about right on that one?
Absolutely,
Okay, I was gonna say, I didn't know if y'all dealt with that before.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, I read things all the time. They say, well, it'll go 100 or 1,500 feet, and you actually try it, and it goes like 100 feet. And as soon as you hit obstruction, it goes south. So I totally get it. And that's part of the reason that we developed that test kit, is because we don't expect you to take our word for it. Too many claims have been made in the past. But I'll tell you why this is different. We use a technology that nobody else uses called chirp spread spectrum, and we developed that technology and have a lot of patents on how we do it. It's very similar to what was used in the early days of radar and sonar, and similar in technique to what dolphins and whales use, and that's why it gets through such heavy obstruction. We guarantee a mile through obstruction, up to 50 miles line of sight. Now that sounds like a pretty substantial claim, right? 50 miles line of sight's a long way. I personally am aware of, or have been out where we've gone 116 miles across the desert from Winnemucca, Nevada to Ogden, Utah. And that is a long way. And that's not what we're claiming, that we can consistently do that kind of mileage. But 50 miles line of sight is doable, and which is quite impressive on a small, and those tests we just did on a 9-volt battery. So, so this is a real technology that is very different than anything else in the industry. I mentioned the encryption and the channel hopping, over-the-air keying. Also, the other thing that's different than anybody else is most of the time you have a radio technology, it sends one signal out. And that signal goes from point A to point B, and if there's anything in between, it goes, well, that's too bad, sorry you didn't get there. We use what's called multipath. So we send out a ton of different signals like a shotgun approach, and encode all the information you need on a single BB. So all it needs is one path to get back, and it can completely operate on that information. So with multipath, we'll send out 20 signals, and you can get 6 back, 5 back, whatever, and the radio just chooses the most robust signal. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And that's part of the reason that we have such a strong radio, is that we don't just send one signal. And so, excuse me, sorry about that. All right. So just kind of look at the family of products that we currently have. We've also got 3 more products that are on their way, but these are the current family of products that we have. We have the Wiegand, which is probably what you guys are most interested in at this point, at least with your bunker application. And that is where you have Wiegand inputs, and you have places where you can verify those credentials. You also have 2 relays going each way, so you can have door position sensors. You can have a doorbell there at the gate, or whatever they want to do. You also have the ability to send, like I said, relays wet or dry back and forth. So HVAC is also a 24 volt. This is a one-to-multiple application where we can send up to 64 channels of relay control out one direction. We also have the relay wireless bridge, which is just like the Wiegand, but doesn't have the Wiegand inputs, just relays. And the analog is a really interesting one, because this one actually has variable inputs and variable outputs. So variable milliamp, variable voltage, variable thermistor, inputs and outputs for different types of applications where you need to be able to open or close a percentage or receive back some type of a sensor that's going to tell you something like CO2 levels or temperature or occupied rooms, things like that. One other thing, and we're going to let Tony do this in a little bit, it'll be his time for his show, and we've got a great mobile app that really does a lot more than most people apps do. This will actually allow you to connect with tech support even back at Surefire headquarters and get the engineers on there. If there's any kind of a problem, we can fix things, oftentimes just looking at the unit right through the app. So this is a great thing that Tony will tell you a little bit about. So All right, so to start with the Wiegand, let's talk just a little bit about this in your particular application. Talked about Wiegand protocols. I'm assuming at the gates, when you guys we pull up to this bunker scenario, your peripheral gate, card swipe or fob or RFID reader, what kind of credentials are you guys exchanging there?
All the above.
Oh, yeah, and
All the
Bluetooth.
above. Okay. Well, luckily we can do all that, so that's good. So yeah, whatever those credentials and whatever flavor that is coming in, Wiegand comes input, sends it over to the controller side, obviously sends out the signal, the command to open the gate, but it also gives you other relays to do a lot of other different things. So if you want to do any of those other things we were talking about, you have plenty of relays on the units to do that. So you have a total of 4 relays to each direction. Some of the ways this has been used, and I'll kind of go through this quickly because you guys have an idea, I think, of where you're wanting to go with this. But obviously the real cost savings for running wire, it's not just the actual wire at 40 cents a foot or whatever it is, and the cost of conduit and the trencher and all that, but it's also the guys, the 3 guys that you're using to work on it. Your truck's not on the next job. Trenching is just expensive. It's difficult, it's expensive, and the real cost of it's a lot more than people probably realize. You guys realize it because that's your business, that you guys see the bottom line, what it costs to put 3 guys in the field and a truck and a trencher and go and drive back and take the trencher in, or whatever the issue is. So trenching, obviously, real cost of that. Retrofit of old buildings, a lot of people, we use these in a lot of courthouses, a lot of old, granite buildings, because it gets through, number one, and number two, nobody wants to drill through that. Historically, or the actual drilling is just a pain. So we also have buildings that sometimes shift and slip, or the conduit gets compromised or crushed or whatever. And we put that in that damaged, shorted wire. We can just replace that. It's done and done. 15-minute install and we're done. So whenever people, when I talk to people, I tell them, if you ever have to trench, if you ever have to pull out the drill holes through stuff, or move ceiling tile or bend conduit, it's not worth it. It's cheaper to do the Surefire unit, number one, and two, it's more secure. And you guys know this. You guys know that you can secure both sides of the access control system, but the wire itself is still running through some drop ceiling somewhere or through conduit somewhere, and those codes and accessibility is compromising. And that's why we've been teaming up with Facebook to develop one of our new products. And they said, you know what? We don't want wire, because wire is less secure than an encrypted wireless signal, because someone trying to get hold of it, they have nothing to hold on to. There's no way for them to get it. So we also using it in a forklift application, put an access control on forklifts so that they can use it on their existing access control system in warehouses and things like that. So as you guys think about your clients and think about the things that they need, these are some things that just to kind of get your mind going on how Surefire could be used. One of the interesting things about the forklift is it also, we have a little impact sensor on the kit that we put together. And so if they hit something, that's going to send a signal or send a little report to their access control system, say, hey, Bob hit something at 3 o'clock that triggered this impact sensor. And they can ask Bob, hey, what did you run over? What'd you break? So others is elevator security. As you know, a lot of elevators have the card swipes inside, but a lot of times people will push the outside of the elevator to sit and go inside and just wait for someone to call it to another floor. We're adding, if you can see my cursor there, we're adding access control to the outside of the elevator and shooting those signals up through the elevator shaft so you don't have to run wire. If you've ever had to run wire through an elevator shaft, you know how much a pain that is. You can do it with Surefire without having to touch it. So, mustering gathering points at places like factories and warehouses, also municipalities. We have a municipality recently that wanted to have all their pump houses, all of their parks, everything on the same access control system. Surefire makes this possible by being able to shoot, that signal a mile across the city from everywhere into their main control buildings. So, any questions we have at this point? I heard some conversation, so which is totally fine. Have you got some thoughts that you want to share?
I was just asking if they've done that, being in Oklahoma, mustering points for more tornado-prone areas or schools or anything like that. And Frank just said that they had done it for oil refineries. So
yeah, it's a great idea. And this way you don't have to run wire to that mustering point. You can see on this one, we just had a solar panel put on it. This was at the Dannon Yogurt Factory. And this way, you know, that oil refinery, everyone badges in, something happens, they all go out and they compare the list and they say, okay, you know, Tim and Bob, they're not here and they work over here. They know where to send first responders to go find Tim and Bob. And that really is important to the companies as well as obviously to Tim and Bob. So good comments. Now, if you've done some mustering points in places like that, would that be a lot easier if you didn't have to trench it?
Yeah, oh, yes, most definitely.
Yeah, and so you know, we found that people have started using Surefire a lot on those mustering points. Okay, Tim, would you take a few minutes at this point and show them the cube and the demo cube, and also take them through the app a little bit, show them kind of how powerful that app can be for them, and then we'll finish up with a little bit more on the demonstration.
So basically what we're looking at is, I've got technically my controllers here. I'm going to show this through a relay. And this is just, you know, as we communicate with these different things, this is just a door open, closed. And you'll see I've just got communication there. It's just sensing that that's being done. Just any push button, really it's just showing what that is. So this is just a lock. It'll give me, and I can set those delays in the app as well. So
Did you come up with that box?
they did.
It is, it's pretty cool.
It's very, very cool. But what he was talking about with the app, I'll show you this. So the app allows you, as you're out in the field, to actually go into the specific device via the code right here. So when you bring up the app, I mean, I'm literally, this is my first screen. Okay. So it's going to, it wants to see that code. Oops. It wants to see the code on this right here. Okay. Advanced connections, I've got a green light. I'm go ahead and connect. Okay. It wants me to now hold down this little button right here for 5 seconds while I connect. And I'm connected. Okay. So now through this application, I'm now talking to not only this unit, but all the other units that it's connected to. Okay. I can come here and
You
compare.
have some kind of security there that you have to.
Yeah. Well, via the code, so they know exactly which one it is.
Couldn't anybody with that app?
No, they can, you can tell them about the app security as far as this. I mean, you've got Face ID and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. If you don't mind me jumping in there.
Yeah.
So the only way to connect to the unit is to have proof of presence. So you have to scan it right when you're there. You don't have the ability to come back later and stand outside the box and access the app. It's scanning while you're there, and it also times out. So it doesn't allow you to have access at any other point unless you have keys to that door and you're supposed to be in there. Does that make sense?
We couldn't get anything else to work.
Anything else?
On that
Yes.
app.
Next time, say something before you take the one off my desk.
Okay, tell Tori.
I'll talk to her.
Or, actually, it wasn't Tori, it was Mark. Anything come off your desk, just start with.
Sorry, we had an interruption.
No, I was just trying to figure out if you're asking a question. I realized this had nothing to do with me.
So basically you have to be on site, and if you move, is there a distance or what is that for the app if it becomes
That connection between the unit and the app is only Bluetooth, and it's meant to do that so that you get further than about 30 feet away and that connection's lost, it resets. And so you have to have proof of presence, and so you it increases the security. Only those who have access to the unit itself and can show proof of presence can get to the app, and it also is encoded. So as soon as that app is accessed, we know that unit has been accessed because of the unique QR code, and which is normally not a problem, but if for some reason you have someone who's accessing it who shouldn't, we can see who and when's done that. So.
Well, but how would you prevent access? I mean, reading a code is not difficult with the devices today.
And if this
And
device
getting-
is sitting in a old site someplace all by itself and nowhere, and someone breaks in the box and accesses the code, what kind of security is on that?
Yeah, is there something beyond just connecting through the QR code in the app where you have to put in a password, a fingerprint, or something else to have a higher level of security to control the devices?
Okay, so and you're saying if to be able to like open or close the relays or something like that?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, we haven't had any problem with that so much. Number one, because we can see what's happening, and so if for some reason that someone says, "Hey, somebody's been accessing my thing," or if there's some type of a problem, we can see that. I suppose it's something we could add. We've had 3,000 installs last year, and we've never had a problem with that actual aspect of it, because that proof of presence is important. If someone's breaking into that, that door itself, or excuse me, that I guess metal box or something like that, if someone's breaking into that, I guess they could, in theory, actually probably just take the wires themselves and connect them with power. You could just do it manually as well. You wouldn't even have to get into the Surify unit because they've already got access to the wires that would send a relay signal. It's something we could do if that's something that you've been concerned about, probably with it just being a firmware thing. But my guess is that once they've already got access to those wires, they probably could find a way to hack around the Surify unit regardless.
Well, I'm thinking up a scenario and maybe putting it in the wrong industry. But if you have a disgruntled petroleum industry or energy industry employee that's been fired, he had the app because he was authorized to have the app and go to the sites before. And let's say it's in a key box, and the keys, because employees of petroleum companies are thousands of miles away from central place. Maybe they didn't get his keys. So he can go to the box, he can open the box, he can scan the QR code, he can use the app and be granted access, and he can do whatever he wants to shut down flow, open up a tank.
Or if you can get into any device that is connected to, we can go and unlock everywhere. If it's got a
We
1
don't know that
mile.
yet. They haven't said that yet. I think that's.
Well, that's what he said.
Well,
Get in and do.
I can see the other devices. I'm not necessarily controlling everything, but I can see what all their signals and all that kind of.
Oh,
This is more of a troubleshooting.
okay.
Or troubleshooting, you can only control what that unit itself can control. Now, what I would do if that was the scenario, I would put an access control. I would put a card reader right on the box. So, and connect that in there to the Wiegand signal as well. So you don't have keys out there. You can say, okay, well, Bob is a disgruntled employee. His card no longer works. That would be the easiest way to make sure that when Bob, the disgruntled employee, didn't turn in his keys, he wouldn't be able to do it. But it's also, you can't control the whole system. You can only control what that box controls.
Yeah, and I was just, as we go through this, especially if there's an issue with firmware, but what I want to show you first is right here. If I'm going into developer mode, or in other words, I'm changing a lot of values, there is a passcode there. Okay. So there is passcodes if I'm going in to do some programming on the.
And those are specific to
Those
the
are
system
passcodes.
that.
Yeah, those are issued. Yeah, those are be issued. Now, the developer codes, is that when your support guys tell them a code?
Yes, that has to be connected directly to Surify Assistance. So did that answer your question? I hope that answered. I can't see anyone's faces, so I can't tell if it's confusing or if you're nodding or what's going on. So did that answer the security issue?
It's not confusing, it's just a little bit, where where we live is security.
Yeah.
And so any possible breach of security needs to be addressed.
Here's something else that can be done. You can, if you want it set so that app is no longer available. So let's say that you have it all set, it's all set up, and you say, okay, we don't want the QR code to open up access to this unit anymore. We can shut that down at our level until we're told by the company or whatever to make that available. because we can say, okay, this QR code is not going to be able to have access to it. Does that make sense? We control. So if I go up and scan a QR code, it says invalid scan or invalid code, no access, can't get in.
Okay.
So I'm assuming, but I want to make sure, you have a 24/7 operations center just to deal with SureFi devices?
Yeah, we have the ability to access those things 24/7. Yes. This would be a scenario where you would want to just say, okay, these QR codes that we installed, this particular customer doesn't want access to those through the app anymore after we've got them all set up. Can you shut these 15 codes down? That's not a problem.
Well, I think what Chuck might be saying is we go out to Joe Bob's site because he has a problem at 11 o'clock at night, and we've got to go in there and try to troubleshoot at this remote location, but we can't scan the QR code. Do you have somebody to contact to be able to turn that back on so we can troubleshoot the device?
Yeah, if that's the scenario, if you decided to shut down QR codes, first of all, you can contact me at that time of night if you want to, and we can get access to it. We don't have a 24/7 call in place, but we can do it in an emergency situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
That
sense.
would be an emergency.
Was that the question you were asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Tony, if you'll share with them, if I were there personally, I'd give you cards, but if you'll share with them my contact information, I'm happy to do that. Well, I'm very confident in this product. Like I said, we've had 3,000 installs. I've been on 1,000 of them, and we've had, and for electronics, if you know what electronic rates are, our failure rate for these units is less than 0.5%, which in the industry is actually really unheard of. And so I'm very confident that you won't have a lot of problems with these, but we want to make sure that you have the ability to have the solution if there is a problem with the system they're associated with, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, don't be intimidated by us beating you up on this, because this is what we do.
No, it's good. The reality is even the airports, the military bases, because they secure the two ends of the system, they haven't been concerned about that, but that is a solution we can do. We can shut those codes off, and if that's something that your clients want to have, and that's totally fine. We adapt to the needs of our clients, and that's no problem.
Okay. I'm not even saying we would even do that. I'm just saying, but if our customers ask, we need an option.
Yeah, and there's options as far as, you don't have to have this thing out in the open. You can put it in a box, you can put it in a steel case, you can lock it, you can do whatever like that too. And the good thing is the communications between the two, just because you've got it in a metal box, it's not limiting that communication at all.
Okay.
We're actually the first radio ever designed to work out of a metal box. We didn't get out of a Faraday cage. If you guys are radio people, you know that nothing gets out of a Faraday cage, but SureFi does. I was really impressed. I came to the company, I thought, there's no way, because I've had some radio background, and they said, yeah, it does, and I had to prove it because I didn't believe it.
Wow.
Okay, so Tony, have you had a chance to get through the whole demonstration, show them how things?
Well, mainly I want to show them operating values and configuration. Those are
Okay, please do.
This is the app. This is what's kind of going into the operation values. So it'll actually show, I'm gonna hold that, when I'm actually, when I'm changing relays. So I can monitor not only from the app, but it also shows me which relays are active, which are, turned on and all that kind of stuff as well.
Cool.
And then I can see power levels, all my Wiegand data. I can see transmits, receives. I can see any errors that are down here. It's going to show that from the app. Also, if there's a firmware update, he mentioned, hey, we can do this in the firm update. You've got a special needs case, you need some different firmware, or you've got a problem with one, we need to update the firmware. They would do that. They actually push the firmware out to the cloud that the app is connected to, and they know what unit you're talking with. Update firmware, and we'll actually push the firmware to the new unit via this app. So,
Sorry, Tony, I apologize for interrupting. Firmware doesn't need to be updated generally. It's only if you have a unique situation. I think Tony alluded to that. If you have a unique situation that we need to throw in some, something unique for your application, then we could do some firmware on that and send it out to your specific units.
But it shows your power levels, it shows, all your wattage outputs and everything on this.
Let me ask you an interim question.
Okay.
So with two techs on the scene, well, you wouldn't even have to. If you swiped on a place, you could watch it on the app to know that that signal got
That's happening here.
How far does the app read away from the unit? Did you say 30 feet?
Yeah, it's a Bluetooth.
Just
Okay.
So somebody may have to stay by the unit, that somebody else could go card all the remote sites and see. You could troubleshoot.
Definitely, this
something.
is the remote site. That is the remote site. That you're connecting to with the app.
So so it's only, I'm thinking you're connecting to the node or the
No,
central.
You can connect
You
either.
connect to either one of them.
both ends.
We may be getting ahead of the game here, but you need one of those for every remote site.
Correct.
How many of those do you need?
One for every
One for every location or one for every port?
port. So that ties straight
Yeah,
into the,
So this is in addition
So
to
these
your
are
access
pairs.
system.
Well, it's not necessarily pairs, but we're talking about Wiegand and how many we're gonna need, John, as far as on a site.
Yeah, if I have 4 gates spread over
Okay.
5 acres,
Yeah, at this point, you want to have 4 pairs, and the reason for that is that way you'll know which gate is being.
I didn't know how many it could split out. So if it can only do 1-to-1, that's
Yeah.
the only way we would do it anyway.
Yeah.
So then there has to be
A pair
a
for each.
procedure to do pairing between the central device and the device being controlled.
yeah,
You put in
Pairing
code.
comes from the factory, but through that app itself, you also can do pairing and unpairing. Let's say lightning hits one of your fences and knocks out one of your units on a peripheral access. It knocks out the whole thing because lightning. You can get just a remote side and repair it to the original. So the pairing and unpairing can be done in the field, but it comes from the factory. It's plug and play, ready to go.
Speaking of lightning, what kind of warranty does this have?
It's a 1-year warranty from when it's installed.
When it's installed, is that when we order it?
No, it's when it's powered up. When it's actually installed is when the timer starts.
That's cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, because you might have it sitting on your shelf for 9 months, right?
Yeah.
But then you have 3 months left for your warranty. That doesn't seem right.
Right. That's the industry.
So in other words, the data from the cloud basically triggers the warranty start? Would that
Yeah.
be?
When you register, when you activate it.
John, any more questions on this part?
Which I think we understand.
Yeah, I think
We understand how
concept.
it works. We just need to know the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, that's what we'll go through. Anything like that. Love these questions. This is a great question. And the other thing about this is that I don't know if you've had the chance to test this. As we work out these nuts and bolts, I also want you to test the signal sometime because I've heard the claims of other products, and so that's why I want you to try this out and see what you think. So, so Tony, are we ready to go ahead and go forward?
Go ahead.
Okay. And one of the hard things is I don't know if it's Travis or Frank or Ron or Chuck or who's talking. So if you have a question, you want a specific answer, I apologize. Just know that I'm speaking back to somebody's voice. So anyway, sorry about that, guys.
No problem.
All right, so here's our Relay IO. Just going to go really quickly over the other ones. It's exactly the same as the Wiegand, but used for relays. So sometimes people want to, piggyback the MyQ system or an RFID reader that has other things to do and just need the relay aspect of it. We also do a relay-only unit. It's a little bit less expensive. You save a few bucks. So, but it still has the four relays. This is our 24-volt relay wireless bridge, and this one's an interesting one. Especially for those of you who are systems integrators. If it's just a plug and play on something and people don't have the engineering background, don't know how to run a meter or whatever, this isn't a very good thing to use across applications. But this can be also used for DC, and so up to 50 volts. So I'm just going to show you kind of how this works. You can do one-to-many on this one. This is an HVAC heat pump example, but you can see how this can be used. You can do channels 1 through 2, one direction, channels 3 through 7 the other, because both are connected into the the thermostat side. And you're sending out, you've got 8 relays going out, 8 controls going out, and 2 coming back. So it's an 8 and 2 kind of a scenario. This also can be used up to 8 relays. So you got 64 outputs in theory off of a single controller, if that makes sense. This can be used obviously for, you know, a bunch of rooftop units on a gym for one thermostat, but it also can have 1,000 other applications that I'm sure you guys can think of how you want to use something like that. But the one to multiple, just so you know, is not differentiated. So you don't have, they all get the same commands out, and when they come back, they're not differentiated between the units. It's a one to multiple. And we are working on a product that can do some of that, but we'll talk about that in a minute. We also have the analog I/O, used a lot with building automation systems, but also can be used for a lot of other things. Anything that needs variable voltage, milliamp thermistor sensors, or controls. So, you know, dampers, valves, whatever else. Any questions so far on those 4 products? Are we good there?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
All right, so this is the part that I think is really important. This is the value proposition. I want to spend a little bit of time on this. I have been out and talked to a lot of integrators, and this is what some of them don't realize right up front, and this is what they come back and say, I wish I had understood this. So I'm going to take a couple minutes on this. When you go out to bid a job, you're walking a job with somebody and you're bidding something, the 2 ways that you get that bid and they accept that bid is, one, they want to know how much it is, and the second thing is they want to know when you can do it, right? And how much time it'll take. So expense and time. And you guys deal with this every day. Sometimes you can come in, and of course with the Surefire, you don't have to trench, you don't have to, you know, bend conduit and all that stuff. The expense comes down. So in that way you have a competitive advantage. But the other side is the time. If you can start doing, and this is a guy, one of the guys in Phoenix that I was talking to, does this too. He puts Surefire on every job, unless it's like 2 feet through non-bended conduit. He puts Surefire on every job because he says 2/3 of his time is taken running the wire. And so if he can do a job that normally would take him 2 days in 4 hours, he can quickly get to that new customer. They say, okay, when can you do it? You tell them 4 or 5 weeks, they're going with somebody else. If you tell them maybe 3 days, then better chance you're getting the bid. And you guys know how that is. You guys know that everybody wants that job done yesterday, as they just got it approved through their budgeting process or whatever. The other thing that is really important for the integrators is to multiply your star integrators. If you have guys in your company that have been doing this a long time, or are really good, really smart, they're certified at all these different ways of doing things, and they can make you a lot of money, you know, installing gate operators, you know, setting the limits, fixing the controllers, doing doors, doing internal controls, whatever. These guys know what they're doing. But what happens is, because of the necessary evil of digging or trenching or whatever, we have them digging holes. So you have this really well-trained and very valuable employee out digging holes, and we waste their capability of making the company more money. So if we can multiply that star integrator, instead of doing 1 job a day, he can do 3 or 4 or whatever the scenario is. You guys understand this. That guy can make you 4 times as much money if he's not digging a hole. And so another value proposition for that Surefire bridge. You're going to win more bids because you can get them done more quickly. The other thing is that we find with this unit, you don't get callbacks. We do not get callbacks. I mean, like I said, we have less than 0.5% failure rate on the unit itself. The most common thing is people don't take a meter and they overpower it and they fry it. So, you know, if people just use the meter and connect it up, make sure it's got it in spec, this thing works. One of the things that I was going to tell you about is that I've got an integrator down in Vegas. He's another one of these guys who said he's just made a business decision that he's going to install almost everything with Surefire, unless it's just super simple. He said, basically, if I'm drilling through a wall, if I'm having to get out a shovel, if I have to pull out a pipe bender, I'm not doing it. I'm just putting Surefire in it and I'm done. And because it takes 15 minutes to wire it up, he just makes sense to him. So what he was doing is he pulled out his dead file, all these people that told him no over the last year. And so many of those told him no, not because they didn't want the job, but it's like an HOA. They say, okay, what's it going to cost to, put access control in this whole place? They say, well, it's $50,000 in equipment and it's $70,000 in trenching and piping and conduit and whatever. And they say, well, $120,000 is outside of our ability to do. We can't do that. So they tell them no, and they keep using the keys, and they keep getting frustrated, having to change the locks and whatever. So he goes back to this dead file and says, hey, we can now do that job for $50,000. And they said, okay, let's do it, because they can now afford to do it with Surefire, getting rid of all the expense of wiring and whatever. And he's telling me, and this is what he said, but he said he's picking up about 60% of the jobs that in the past have been priced out because of wiring and whatever. So that's a huge thing for an integrator. You go back to your dead file and pick up 60%. I don't know what would be in your situation, but pick up 60% of the people who said, well, thanks for the bid, but no thanks. That's huge. So what questions do you have about that? This particular part of it's important to our integrators. They really need to understand this, and as they start using Surefire a lot, they realize this is what we provide. What questions do you have?
I think we understand that part of it.
You probably understand it a lot better than I do, so that's good.
My brain can't process the cost part of it.
We currently try to go wireless wherever possible anyway, but we don't have a product like this right now.
Right. And that's what I'm sort of, my question mark
Honestly,
is how
we
much
use-
does it cost for the two pieces you need to
And we
get?
use a lot of Ubiquity here.
Mhm.
Okay.
And Ubiquity is great if it's line of sight, right?
Sure, and that's for the most of our applications that we work with wireless, that's what we're doing.
Now, the other challenge, just so you know, and this is, and there's nothing wrong with that product. I will say that a lot of people that I have talked to that have changed Ubiquity out for a Surefire unit is a couple things. If you have anything that goes in between those 2 points, a truck, whatever, you lose it. If the Wi-Fi goes down, if it's like my house, it goes down about every other day. But if the Wi-Fi goes down, you're dead in the water. This is a standalone, and it also makes it so it's not secure. You might have a Wi-Fi password to hack, but that's very, very easy to do compared to military grade encryption. So a lot of people that I have talked to that have replaced Wi-Fi types of scenarios have gone to this because of some of those other things. I said we can go through all of this obstruction. It doesn't matter who comes in front. It doesn't matter if it's raining, snowing, whatever. And so you may want to consider, depending on what the scenario is, and I get there's a lot of different situations. If it's something like a weakened protocol, if it's something like a straight relay, this would be something that would be much more reliable and much more secure than a Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we understand. We totally get it. And I can think of several applications where this would have been better than what we did.
Yeah, most definitely.
And I can think of a lot of situations coming up that we could use it on.
That's correct.
And trees. Trees are always.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can't control the branch.
Well, and a tree is not there when you put them in, and then somebody plants a tree and it grows over time, and now you're hosed.
Yeah, and it's wonderful that they're planting trees, but you screwed us over, right?
Right.
It's not, but
It's not network.
at that one location that we're working over maintenance right now, the trees weren't there. Now trees are there, now
Right.
we're hosed. This will work out perfect.
Right.
And that presented an initial problem too with Hertz, because where he was wanting to shoot it from, they have the trees in the parking lot, and I wasn't sure if it was gonna
That's
be.
network. It's a network connection though. It's actual network connection.
Yeah, but you'd still, on the Ubiquity, you'd still have to go line of sight if you had a tree
Yeah.
in between the two
But this
devices.
wouldn't do
But
that.
this ain't gonna do that.
Oh, I know that, that's what I'm saying. That's-
Yeah.
So we
It's
rerouted.
it's definitely got its place.
Yeah. So how much do they cost? I'm sitting here. It's the dollars and cents of
Yeah.
it.
Well, to answer your question, it depends on where you get it. It's those branches will set their own prices. Generally speaking, for a set of these, you usually run in between $3 and $350 is where people have been setting that price. So which is compared to the time and the expense of doing all those other things, that's a pretty easy thing to justify.
How's that compared to
And
Ubiquity?
that's the pair.
The pair.
It's probably comparable to Ubiquity. But again, this would be a great solution for something like that. But a lot of stuff that we do, you gotta remember it's network.
So,
You might be
okay,
out at a gate that's got a networked intercom, a networked camera, and then a access control also at the gate.
Okay.
You still have to get that network back.
Well,
Gotcha.
let me actually speak a little bit about that, just because it's something that we're working on doing a little bit.
Good.
Because yes, what you're bringing up is true. If you've got some things that need a network and need, a push to talk call box or something, this particular Wiegand unit won't do that. I'm going to get to that in just a second, because we have a new unit that we're in development. It's in beta right now that will do a lot of those things, specifically the voice and serial data. But let me show you this really quickly. This is the testing unit. Tony, have you showed them this testing unit?
I haven't yet, but I've got it with me.
Okay. This unit is one you keep this in your truck, and Tony can get you signed up. What it is, you can request one of these units from the factory. We'll send it out to you, and you can keep it in your truck. It's yours to keep.
One on.
What you want to do is when you go walk that job, you drop one in the control box. You go out and hit all the units, whatever. It can be tested from either side, and it can show you how many of the paths are coming back. This is not like, however, I don't know, Tony, have you got it out pushing the buttons yet?
Yeah, they've got it now.
Okay, so if you can see, there's 6 LEDs lighting up there. That's showing you that there's 6 paths, 6 separate signals coming back. The reality is you only need one signal, because this is not like a cell phone. When I call my wife, if I have one bar, she's only getting every third word, right? This is multipath, meaning we're actually sending out 6 signals, and one strong full signal is coming back with all of the information that you need. So it'll work just fine, even on one. So just as you're out there testing it, one signal, one LED coming back is basically what everybody else is offering, except for they don't have the penetration. So we have 6 complete signals coming back when you have LED, and any one of those signals would work just fine. And so, Tony, if you wouldn't mind helping, I'd love to get these guys on the website and requesting their own unit so they can get their evaluation kit in. It takes about 3 or 4 days to come in. We'd love to have you guys have one of these in your trucks.
Okay.
Any questions on that unit? It's basically just the radio side, so it shows you how strong the signal is, but it's the exact same radio that's sitting on the Wiegand and all the other products as well. Let me show you some of the things that are coming up. Well, this is some stuff that we've got. Some of it's in beta, some of it's just about ready to go to beta in development. Start left is we've got a Relay Pro unit. Once again, same radio on the left side, so same heavy obstruction penetration, robust signal. But this sends 8 relays. You have 2 8-amp relays and 6 1-amp relays. If you have a situation where you need to send a lot of relays, you have also the Access Pro, and this will allow you to do OSDP and other, as well as Wiegand and different things. This just allows you to do more with a single unit. And this is sending it, this is where we get into that one to multiple, depending on what the situation is. This could possibly do that with some addressing and whatever. The serial data, which is the one on the bottom, is one that we were talking about a few minutes ago that we've done voice through. And this allows you to set, you can send some serial data network information. And what I mean by that is the trade-off for having heavy penetration and having long range, that trade-off is low bandwidth. That's just the way that works. I'd love to magically say we can do anything, but we have to obey the laws of physics, right? So the trade-off for that heavy penetration is low bandwidth, but we can, because of compression and the way that we've done things, we can send serial data with relatively low bandwidth back and forth between things with this unit, and enough so that you can do voice. So if you want a call box, the serial data bridge will do that, and within about a week and a half, they will have beta units ready to go. So if you have a situation where you're thinking, man, I've got a call box, they want to send access control, or have a call box that they can call in and get someone to open the gate, we'll have this beta unit ready, and we'd love to have you guys test one out. We're very confident in it because we've already got them in our own buildings, but like I said, we're happy to send one out and would love to get somewhere in the field as this is coming to beta test, like I said, the next week and a half. So gentlemen, are you thinking of ways that you could possibly use that serial data bridge with a call box and things like that?
Ohm's failure on the network,
Yes.
Now,
no, it won't fix that. They have to fix the
yeah,
network.
there's still a network issue there.
Right, but if we had a loss of the
It has
network.
nothing to do with the wireless out there.
Okay.
It's at
Well,
the switch.
But I mean, if we
No, what
lost,
he's talking about is we do away with that board and use a port that's hardwired.
Darn it was.
If they buy a board, it is.
If I boarded it, yeah. And you
If
put
you
it on-
have, some kind of a product that could be, like, that could be connected with serial data, depending on what type of they're using and what kind of information is going back and forth. That's something that we can use with this. Now, just so you know, just to give you a point of reference, this will not do video. The physics of this radio will not do video, but it will do voice, and it can do other network information back and forth as long as it's relatively low bandwidth and serial data.
So I'd say it definitely has a place. It's not a fix-all,
Nope, it isn't.
but I can think of,
real-time current applications.
I
that
can
it-
think of a
yeah,
lot of places
Yeah.
where this would work.
Yeah,
And
So-
I'm bored with the not pulling cable across the building.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice. And so, and here's the other thing about the application is that we have the ability with our engineers to look at it, and so much of network data that's going back and forth is just random code. And they just code compiling, and this is kind of I'm not a coder, but basically what they do is they have a ton of information, when in reality, the only thing that they need is the little bit that changes. And the rest is just fluff from code compiling. And so what our engineers and programmers can do is they can say, okay, you're sending the information from here to here. This 90% of overhead isn't necessary. All we need is the 10% of change. And they can spoof the programming on both sides to allow you to do that, because you don't need the information that keeps being sent. All you need is the change information. And so what was a high amount of data and big bandwidth can be spoofed to be just the information that's salient, just what you need. And so we've done that quite a bit on some different scenarios, because everybody's doing high bandwidth, but we can actually tweak it by getting rid of all the fluff that you don't need and sending only the information that you do across the bridge. So,
Can you speak more about the serial data?
pardon?
Can you talk a little bit more about the serial data that's coming out?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying is that with that serial data bridge, if we know what the protocols are between the two items, we can get rid of all that fluff and just send the important information. So it allows us to use the serial data bridge for a lot of stuff that maybe you wouldn't be able to use if you just looked at how much it's moving currently, how much bandwidth. The serial data can then be connected to, but just sending the little bit of information. But like I said, we can do voice, we can do a lot of different things by way of serial data information going back and forth between connected and communicating units. Do you have specific questions about it, or that was kind of all a little bit about that?
No, just a lot of our devices can communicate serial instead of network.
Yeah, if they can communicate serial, what we need to do is we need to either get your unit out there and have you connected, and our engineers, like I said, can look at the unit and see what the information is coming in. They can even write specifically, let's say you're going to do it, you're going to have 20 of these entrances or whatever, or you use the same kind of setup each time. We can write some firmware that can be put into those units that can get rid of all this extra fluff and send the serial data that you need over the network. So I'm saying is we can adapt these for your individual applications, specifically just depending on what the hardware is connecting to. And I have been out on some of these where you go out and we just put the probes on it, we test it, we look at what you're sending, and we tweak the serial data that they're going to get to optimize for their specific situation.
All right, well, I got a handful of projects that could use this currently.
Well, and a question I think we're wanting to bounce off is, what are the power requirements for the Surefire devices, each end of it? And how can we, with our knowledge and the equipment, create uninterruptible power supplies for these devices?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm going to actually skip ahead just a little bit because I've got a diagram that'll show you. Where's my power? Providing power. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yep.
All right, so we have the ability, most of them, almost all of them are 12 volt DC. And in reality, the HVAC that is technically set for 24 volts can also be run off of 12 volt DC. So you have a 12 volt DC inputs. We also have a spot for battery backup that will keep it charged. And so anytime it drops power, the battery backup jumps in and it's at full power. So we've even had people put these on a solar application with a single battery or even with a double battery. So they'll have the main battery, that might be a, I don't know, 6 amp hour battery, and then they have a 2 amp hour battery in case that you have some reason that the solar unit has some kind of a problem. But we've done on just solar panel applications. We've also done them where there's power, and then you have a battery backup. So the uninterrupted power is not a problem based on the way it's designed.
I'm assuming they're low consumption on power. What's your estimation for running off? We commonly use a 7 amp hour 12 volt battery. What do you think the runtime is on between the two devices, each having their own separate battery?
Okay, so I'm going to go out here and show you, but I believe it was on this one, it was 0.03 amps at rest. Let's see if I can find the spec sheet on it. There we go. Okay, idle 0.08 amps at idle, 0.3 amps at transit, right there. And so I'm a ballpark. If you have a 7 amp hour battery, I think you'd be. Is this in a solar application where they're going to continue receiving charge?
Well, I'm more used to ours that are on AC power, but
yeah.
Oklahoma and its weather, we can have AC power outages for days on places that don't have generators and other devices.
What I would recommend in that case, a 7 amp hour battery, and it's a ballpark estimate. It will also depend on what you set your heartbeat. Do you remember when we showed you on the app that there's a place to set heartbeat?
Yes.
If you set that heartbeat every 2 hours, so it's only saying, are you there every 2 hours? It's only going to go into transmit power every 2 hours. That 7 amp hour battery should last a number of days. I can't tell you exactly. I'd have to do the math on it because you're looking at a 0.08 amp at idle. And so it should work just fine until you guys can get power back to it. But if you're concerned about it, bump it up to a 10 amp hour or whatever, if it's an area that drops power a lot. But 7 amp hours is a fairly substantial battery for a very low consumption of these units. Now, they're a powerful radio, so when they transmit, you're looking at a third of an amp. But, at idle, it doesn't really take much. But that heartbeat time is going to be salient for that, because if you have heartbeat every 1 minute, that's going to drop a lot more power than if you are heartbeating every 2 hours. But that's adjustable at from your app. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, it gives us a good idea that we can keep them up and operating. Either with the loss of solar.
You gotta understand, you got the power of the reader that's cooked to it, you got power of the lock that's hooked to it. All that stuff's gonna be drawing power that's in that location.
I was thinking of a separate battery just for the Surefire device versus the entire panel.
Now, if you guys want to go, if you want to, let's say you've got out there, door strike, and you've got a door position sensor, and you've got a card reader. Obviously, that's going to draw a little bit more power, but you just bump up the amps on the battery, and you can also power all of that through the Surefire unit. You don't have to have that separate if you don't want to. It's just up to however you want to configure that system.
What is the capacity output for a lock on the Surefire unit?
We've actually done 250 volt mag locks with it. I would, if I were doing it that big, I would just run it separate and clip the negative, right? Clip the ground. But we can do up to 250 volts mag locks through them.
What kind of current?
I'd have to look that up. I apologize. I don't know that one off the top of my head. But this is all of this information is available online. If you go to our, let's see how they've got that one out. It's on a relay. Yeah, I don't know what the amp draw on that particular one we tested was. But if you go to surefire.com, they do have all the spec sheets and all the wiring diagrams, and it would show what that max is. Like I said, if I were doing a big one, I wouldn't send it directly through it, and it shows you how to do that. You could just disconnect the negative side.
We work a lot with low current locks anyway.
Okay. Yeah. So break-in current is believe is quite low on it. So you shouldn't have a problem with low current locks.
Yeah, we try to stay away from mag locks.
Mag locks are great as long as, yeah, there are challenges with them sometimes. So.
Well, they're a great device, but there's no real fail secure available.
Yeah, and they draw a ton of power, and
And they had their day.
I think people realize that there are better ways to do it now. So.
Well, yeah, with the life safety codes and all the fire marshals getting real strict on it, you're just better off to just use mechanical electronic locks.
Yeah, and it works out quite well. And people have used us. People have actually used us. Now, just we are UL listed. Some of our units are UL listed. Others are in process. But as you guys know, with fire specifically, the best way for people have used us to reset things like on a secondary, but unless it's UL listed with a specific fire unit, it can't be used on a primary. But you guys know all this. But,
yeah.
But the UL listing ones can be used to reset things. So within the parameters that they give. So they always give you stipulations. It has to be in this type of thing and whatever. So, but any other questions about that? We've come to the end of what is generally what I teach people about. Like I said, we've got additional resources there that we'll send out to you. A lot of those resources are actually at surefire.com. If you go to the specific unit, you get all of the wiring diagrams and all of the ratings and that kind of thing. So I want to really quickly, just because I want to make sure I did a good job and didn't skip over much, kind of go over this. What stood out to you by way of value proposition for your specific company? What's standing out to you and saying, hey, we really ought to be using Surefire this way to help us save money and time and whatever?
The easiest thing to think about would be the value, because I just basically take your cost divided by my amount of what I charge for labor to come up with the hours to see how could I squeeze it in there to make my jobs more cost effective and to put me underneath my competition. Yeah. So that and then we have several locations that have our problem children that we've been dealing with for years. And this might, on the service side, go in there, remove that. And once again, my goal is to eliminate my competition. So if I get in there and show that this works, then they're not they're trying to service it either.
Yeah, it's great. A couple things that come to mind. First of all, problem children are probably something that needs a Surefire unit. We found that to be the case in so many places. Number two, myself or one of my people will actually come out and help do installations on the first one or two, especially these problem children that you're talking about. We'll come out on the installation and help to make sure that it runs smoothly and make sure that you guys know what you're doing. Sometimes with a new unit and a new product, it's like, well, how exactly is the best way to do this? And so our offer stands that we'll come out and help on an installation. Obviously, after you've done one or two, you're going to go, we got this, we don't need you. But we're happy to do that. Also, the other thing about the real cost that I think that you brought up was great. You divide the hours. Then you're also talking about, if it's got to go through a ceiling, sometimes you need a lift, you guys throwing it, sometimes you need to get a trencher. How much time does it take to do that, and then have to clean it up so you don't get charged extra. So $300 or $340 or whatever it is that they're charging, we made it very quickly when you start looking at the real cost, not just hours, but the truck and the equipment and renting stuff, and you know what I'm saying. So
Right. If you look at some of the, I was just thinking about some of our obstacles, you know, sometimes the cable path, we can see where we have to go, but the cable path is not that direction. It goes way around through firewalls, have to make the penetrations, all of that. This,
Go through a 40-foot ceiling lift area.
yeah,
Well, and
we're needing a lift.
when Travis and I did the Logan County Courthouse, they already had an external an external piercing of the 100-plus-year-old structure for a
Right.
video camera. We were
Right.
how we do this through there. Well, with this device, we could have forget it. We don't need to pierce anything. We just need to place it on an upper level, and it'll transmit, receive across the street. We were going to do a satellite building for a courthouse with access control.
And a lot of these towns, they're historical sites. So
Yeah.
your penetrations and stuff have to be, you have to go in and they have to x-ray and verify you're not hitting anything that's previous and all that fun stuff,
My
which is
home
extra
county,
cost.
they've
yeah, and
tested
that's
it.
a mess. That is just a mess. We have to get the X-ray in there and everything. So
Right.
this solution to those scenarios, these are great thoughts.
Well, I guess our next step is we need to get a unit in here.
We have actually an application already.
Now, where do you like to purchase your stuff? Where is it that you normally purchase your access control equipment?
Well,
AMAG,
yeah, we buy all of our stuff through AMAG.
Yeah.
they're not a rep, right? They're not a partner.
Who's the partners you guys use?
Southwest, SAS is here. They're the guys that I met with yesterday afternoon.
SAS has them.
Yeah, and they actually have units in stock right now. They're on the shelf.
Are they the only?
No, I'll look in Oklahoma City at all the distributors.
You do Wesco, CSE,
ADI.
We've chosen to kind of go with smaller distributors, mostly because this is a type of product that you need to have knowledge. And
Right.
Most of the people who you call up, like at ADI, and I'm not going to bag ADI, they're fine, but you call up, they don't know what the product does. They just like, what's the number? I'll send it to you. And so we've actually stayed with some medium-sized people. So we have SAS, we have Control Products, we have Jameson Fence, we're in Ferguson. They're big, but also Gray Bar. They carry our products.
Great one.
well, Gray Bar is not small.
Yeah.
No,
No, they're not small, but they're little.
Gray Bar, it's funny because Gray Bar is a situation where you have some branches that stock it and they're selling the heck out of it. So many people are getting it. Other branches don't even know what it is. And so each branch, so if you have a Gray Bar you like to use, I personally like the fact, love the fact that you can go into a place like SAS and they can help you, they can kind of help put together the system for you. They hear new things, whatever. But if you want a Gray Bar can get it too. I don't know if they're a stocking one there in OKC or if it's one that they'll have to get in for you. I just don't know.
Well, it sounds like this SAS is right around the corner, so. I'm
Yeah,
good with
it's a
that.
great. They've been a great company. We've worked with them for a year and a half, 2 years. They've been a great company to work with. So my recommendation would be to go to someone close and local. I like going local.
Yeah, they actually were doing training 2 weeks ago in the Dallas office. We did some yesterday up here, and he's sold it and he's worked with it before up here already. He's got them in stock. So they've invested a lot of time in some of their engineering staff as well.
I
So
think it's due.
And it doesn't to me,
Go
this
visit with them and try to develop a relationship.
no.
But then we've been doing this for 25 years.
Right.
So.
Tony, I apologize. I didn't hear what that question was.
He just said that it didn't seem like it's that complicated a product. He said, but then again, we've been doing it for 25 years.
Yeah, most guys who've been doing it for 25 years won't have a problem with it. Where we run into people who are having a problem is the guys who won't get their meter out and don't look at the instructions. So
We tend to try to develop our own solutions when nobody else has one.
yeah, it's
But we don't like to reinvent the wheel.
I think you guys, I think it sounds like you guys are the kind of people that are going to come up with solutions and tell me about them. I have a couple of integrators that are calling me every week saying, hey, we're going to use this with this, transit thing to shoot the bus information back and forth. They've come up with some great solutions. And I just think, well, how are you doing that? And they tell me about it. I'm like, well, yeah, that would work. So we go out on it. We help them develop the process. And I'd love to hear some of these solutions from you guys. And like I said, if you, I'm offering this, personally, I will come out and go out on one of these bunker installs. I'd love to not only come out and make sure it's easy to do, but number two, I'd love to get some documentation of it, just a video of how you guys are using it.
Well, I'm going to say a funny thing, and I may be wrong, but you only have one component of this company here. Our HVAC and building automation guys are not in here, and you may have been the rest of the day trying to talk about your products to them, especially your HVAC.
Yeah, well, and we're going to pass that on to them then.
Yeah, those HVAC building automation guys love the analog and the HVAC products because it makes it so that, number one, they don't have to use as many JACE units, and those things have these, every 3 years they have to be updated, and they do service contracts that are ridiculous expensive. So it's cheaper for them because they don't have to use as many JACEs. It basically takes all the sensors and controls away from that geographic area and makes them so that they can efficiently use the JACE units back next to the controller, and guys love that.
I think we should have had Tori here.
So if you want to mention it to them, I'd be happy to get on a call with them and talk about how it's being used. Obviously, that's not your area, but if you want to mention it to them, I'd love to chat with them about it.
Come in.
Yeah. Another thing on this app, he's going to go see if the guy's there. But another thing on the app, before we get into all the configuration, there's also an instruction manual and instructional video
Okay, yeah.
here.
So without
In the
needing-
app.
without needing the QR code or anything, can we download the app and look at the features of it, or do we
You
have
don't
to?
need to, yeah, the instruction manual and the wiring diagrams as well as the video are all available without scanning a QR code at all.
Okay. But you would download the app to your smartphone?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
those things are available without even being next to a unit at all.
He's gonna wheel a chair around. Sure.
This is Chuck, and I'm gonna have to say adios. I've got an 11 o'clock appointment over by the Capitol, so.
No, that's great.
We're gonna bring in the HVAC component. They could have been here from the start, but we were approaching this strictly from the security aspect use of it and didn't really know the line of products.
Yeah. And just in case, I'm going to leave all of this literature here.
Okay,
And however it wants to be dispersed, there's 2 of each, but the HVAC is in here as well.
okay.
So those are there. The analog. Yes.
Would you, before Chuck goes, would you help him really quickly get a unit coming his way? Get on surefire.com and really quickly get that
Yes.
requested so we
Yes.
can get it out to him?
We're talking about the testing.
Yeah. But you sent one of these. Let's see.
Do I need to request it or do you request it?
We can get that requested real quick
Okay,
if you want to.
go ahead.
Gentlemen, I'm gonna have to get out of here. John, I appreciate all of your help.
Of course.
This is
Thank you,
Travis.
sir.
Thank you,
Tony
sir. I appreciate you, Tony.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it so much. And like I said, let me know when you want to go out and try this at one of those bunkers. I'll fly out and come out and go with you.
Okay.
Plus, that gets me back to close to home. I used to live in Texas, so I know Oklahoma and Texas, there's a rivalry, but it's close to home. So
That's all right. We're on the right side of the Red River here, so we're good.
that's right. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate it.
I didn't respond. Were you proud of me? I said nothing.
I'm really proud of you.
It's gone.
All right.
These are the guys.
This is information here. Okay.
Don't
That's the
need
website.
anything else for me before we go ahead and disconnect?
Sorry, hang on. I think we lost. Just a second. He's gonna
Yeah,
do,
no problem.
how are you? I'm Tori. Tori, Tony Hayes. Tony. Mark. Mark, Tony Hayes. Good to meet you. Behind that screen is John.
Hi, John.
Hey, how we doing?
Pretty good.
I'm the creepy guy on the computer. Sorry about that.
All right.
We just, I just wanted you to go ahead and just kind of give these guys a wide idea of what you've got available for automation, just so that they can kind of have an idea.
Automation scenario?
Yeah,
Okay. Now tell me your name one more time. I apologize. I could barely hear it.
My name's Tori, and then Mark.
Okay, Tori and Mark, welcome. We've been over a little bit with Sure5. Basically, what we've been talking to these guys about is this is a radio technology that is unique and has never been used in this type of product before, but we go through heavy obstruction. Like I've been 31 steel walls, I've been concrete steel walls. This is a really unique type of a scenario. So, but the thing that they mentioned that you'd like to probably know about is that we have two products that use the same high-penetrating, robust through heavy obstruction type radio to control HVAC and building automation sensors and control units. And I'm going to just jump to that part if that's okay. I'm going to jump up here and show you. Actually, let me go to here first. Let's see if I can. All right, so
hold on, John.
Hang on a second, John.
I'm filling out the.
Oh, you need to talk over.
okay, so you can't see what my screen's doing.
Not yet.
Oh, wait, no problem.
That's in the way here.
I'm doing the request.
You're good. You're good.
Hate typing.
Well, it's not giving me the select the state either.
My 11-year-old's learning to type in school right now, and she comes to me a couple days ago, and she's not back in school yet, but when she was just finishing
Won't take the values.
French,
They
man,
gave me the drop down list
why
before.
don't you guys just do what everybody else does? Just talk to the computer.
Right?
What do you need to do?
Yeah, here, let me see. It may be
Dude,
something-
everything else is in there.
Yeah, it may be something with the display connected.
If you need to, Tony, you can just jot down his information that he put in, and we can.
Yeah, I'll get it.
Let's not hold him up.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll figure it out. We'll finish it up afterwards.
Sounds great.
Thanks again, John. This is Chuck saying adios, bud.
Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it, pal.
All right, we got your full screen now.
And Chuck, I'm gonna send you Stephen Hines.
All right. Well, I'd like to apologize for my ugly face. If you got it full screen, unfortunately, you're seeing me. But here is an overview really quickly of our products, and the ones that you would be most interested in most likely is this HVAC wireless bridge and the analog wireless bridge. So I'm going to go over those really quickly with you to some of the features, and I can talk to you a little bit about how they're being used in BAS. So we'll jump right down here to the HVAC. And the HVAC, 24 volt setup, just like most of all the HVAC systems. But what it also can do, it's really nice, is it can be expandable one to multiple. It's been used for heat pumps, condensers, building automation. They use it a lot for triggering alarms or resetting alarms, and sensors and things. This is an example of a heat pump. In a real simple scenario, you can get the two units on the right, listening to the original thermostat or whatever controller unit it is. In this case, it's like a residential, but and you get the two channels that are being used at the air handler. Those are listening to channels 1 and 2, heat pump sides 3 through 7. The whole thing can be wireless. It has no problem getting through all of those floors. We've actually taken this system through a high rise of 23 floors. It's no problem, goes right through it. This can also be connected up to 8 units. It's actually not a magical number. We can even do more than 8, but we found that 8 usually is sufficient. Or, like say you have a bunch of rooftop units and in a gym or whatever, and you want to control it off a single thermostat. Or in this case, if you have a bunch of sensors in a BAS system. This shows one of the setups that we did. We have our analog I/O, and it's connected in there, to looks like a Vicon expansion port for analog I/O. Basically, all the sensors and all of the occupation triggers or whatever kind of sensors you've got out in the building, you can come in and come into a single location. So you guys know you put out a JACE unit. Sometimes you have to put those out geographically, and you have maybe 7 or 8 JACE units or whatever out there because geographically you've got to run those sensors in. You're limited by how far the wire can go before you turn it into network wire, right? But those also have those service contracts on them. You're never filling up all the I/O until you get back to this point where you're there at the controller side. And so what you can do is you can more efficiently use your JACE units. You can put all the JACE units back next to the controller, run all the sensors wirelessly with the analog or the HVAC units and bring them all back. So you're using maybe a third the number of JACEs and it all comes back and just goes directly into your I/O. So the analog bridge does variable voltage, milliamp, and thermistor, and the outputs in there. So when someone starts just writing the different lines and whatever, and inputting how that's going to be utilized, all of those sensors that are variable voltage, milliamp, thermistor can give the information. You can also control dampers and valves with it. So you can really go completely wireless from the control unit out to all of that analog I/O. And so the sensor,
Real quick,
yeah.
can I ask a question on that picture? So that module you got in the bottom of the can, those are hardwired outputs back to the Jace?
Yeah, so this is connected, hardwired into the Jace or the expansion, and this is wirelessly. This particular one was doing a light meter up on the roof, and so when we first connected this light meter, this actually will do up to 6 sensors, so you can do 2 voltage, 2 milliamp, and 2 thermistor into this unit. Anyway, this was connected to a light meter. We had it on a thermistor. We had 3 there. I think it was light meter, thermistor, and occupation sensor, occupied sensor, something like that. Anyway, they were sending all 3 of those sensors wirelessly from from the other side of the warehouse, and because they didn't have the wire for it, and sending it over here, connecting right into the Jace unit hardwired. And the Jace unit feel the difference. What's that?
Instead of hardwired, analog outputs or inputs, do you guys have a module that will take your wireless signal and just convert it to, like BACnet or something over IP?
Okay, so yes and no. Right now, no. I'm going to jump down to something we're working on, specifically a serial data port bridge. This is coming. We're about ready to go beta with this unit. This one is we can do Modbus with it, but here's the thing that's a little bit that I need to explain. The trade-off for having heavy penetrating radio signals and stuff that'll go, we guarantee a mile through obstruction, 50 miles line of sight. It's just an amazing radio. But the trade-off is you can't do a lot of bandwidth. And so what we've been doing in scenarios where we have connections between things is that we will connect to the unit, see what the signal is putting out, and a lot of that is just overhead. It's fluff. About 90% of it's code compiling fluff. And so what we do is we then can look at it and say, okay, all the information that needs to be sent is the salient information, which is the change of state, right? And that information we send over the serial data bridge, and we can usually fit a lot of that into what bandwidth we do have by just doing a little bit of firmware and getting rid of the fluff and just sending the change. So it's something that we would need to connect to your Jace unit or whatever and see what it was being sent across, and then we can just basically just set the fluff aside and only send the change signal, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
So, like I said, we don't have it right now, but we're about ready to go to beta with it. And I was just telling these guys, I'd actually like to come out. They've got some installations. I'd like to come out and help take a look at with some of the access control. But if you would like to, I'd be happy to come bring out one of our serial data bridges. We can connect to your unit, and we can assess the code, assess what's being transferred, and then our guys can write some firmware and make it so it's specifically for your units that you use. And I'm confident that we can get rid of the fluff and get that directly into you, so you don't have to use all of your analog I/O.
Yeah, that's where I was heading with that. If I can save from having to buy an analog I/O card on my side, that would help a little bit.
And that's where, if you would please give Tony your contact info.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be heading out there in a few weeks, and I would love to come by and let's connect one of the units to it. Let's analyze the signal and let our programmers make it so that it's optimized for your system. And I'm confident we can make that work for you.
Yeah, we'd like to see, the analog I/O and your what'd you call it? The gateway deal?
The serial.
Serial. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, let's get that, Tony, if you'll get his information to me, let's set time and we'll come out and let's get this going and do some testing and some analyzing and put our guys on it, our engineers and programmers.
That's fine.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Any questions about, like I said, these other ones, both the HVAC and the analog will go directly into your expansion card, your IO card. But like I said, which can be used right now. We have those available. So we think of those solutions, but it would even be nicer to go directly in with the serial data, right?
Right. Yeah, there's a place for both of them in our business here, so.
That's great. Well, let's do that. Tony will get your info to me, and I'll probably call you in the next few days, and we'll set up a time in a few weeks out down the road when you guys are available, and I'll come out and we'll take a look at it.
Great.
Perfect. Hey, thank you for your unscheduled time. I know that it's always great to be grabbed from your desk and say, hey, take a look at this, but we appreciate it.
No,
Any other questions you have for me?
not right now.
Perfect.
Appreciate it.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We'll be in touch, and we'd like to maybe connect to this, come out and on the same trip do the HVAC BAS side as well as some access control, if you don't mind. That'd be great.
Perfect.
Do those. I think that's
Appreciate
it.
your time.
It's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Probably have one of these in our office tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ron.
Tony, anything else for me?
No, that's it. Appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all your work. Appreciate all the time, gentlemen. Enjoy. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, John. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Bye.
So after